A bear cub refuses to leave a stranger's side. The reason leaves everyone speechless. Deep in the heart of a wild and untamed forest, an extraordinary story unfolded, one that would leave even the most skeptical heart speechless. A lone ranger, on her daily patrol, encountered something she could never have expected: a tiny bear cub, frail and desperate, refusing to leave her side. But why? What secret was this little creature trying to reveal? This isn't just another tale of the wilderness, it's a story of loyalty, resilience, and a connection that defies all logic. A moment where human instinct and nature collide in the most profound way. By the end, you'll understand why this encounter left everyone, myself included, completely awestruck. Before we dive into this emotional journey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss stories like this, ones that remind us of the beauty and mystery of the world we live in. Now, let's step into the forest and uncover the truth behind the bear cub's unwavering trust. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction, an ancient labyrinth of towering pines, golden aspens, and whispering winds. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that seemed to merge with the wilderness. Beneath Maya Cross's boots, the leaves crunched with every step, their brittle edges betraying the calm of the late autumn afternoon. The air was crisp, carrying the unmistakable scent of pine, damp earth, and the faint metallic tang of the approaching cold season. Maya adjusted her ranger hat, pulling her jacket tighter against the cool breeze. She paused to scan the horizon, the binoculars hanging from her neck catching the faint rays of sunlight filtering through the trees. It was a tranquil scene, a slice of untouched beauty. Yet, as serene as it appeared, Maya felt a persistent tension settle deep within her chest. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. She had spent years as a wildlife ranger, patrolling the dense forests bordering Glacier National Park. The job was her life, a calling she had embraced with open arms. But lately, doubt had begun to gnaw at her resolve. Conservation budgets were being slashed, illegal poaching was on the rise, and the delicate balance of the forest seemed to be teetering under the weight of human apathy. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was fighting a losing battle. The crackle of her radio broke her thoughts. "Maya, you there?" a voice called, slightly distorted by static. Maya reached for the device on her belt. "I'm here." "What's up?" "Got a report of hunters near the eastern boundary." "Can you check it out?" "They're not supposed to be there this time of year." "Copy that. I'll head over now." She slipped the radio back onto her belt, her brows furrowing. Illegal hunters were a persistent issue in the area, and while most fled at the sight of a ranger, some were bold enough to challenge the rules outright. Maya had learned to approach such situations with caution. As she turned onto a narrow, less trodden trail, the forest seemed to shift around her. The vibrant chatter of birds faded, replaced by a heavy silence. The towering trees grew closer together, their branches interlocking like skeletal fingers. Shadows deepened, and the golden hues of the leaves took on an amber glow in the waning light. The trail was rugged, twisting sharply as it climbed a small incline. Maya's boots slipped on loose rocks, but she caught herself with a hand against a tree. Her other hand instinctively brushed the can of bear spray clipped to her belt. It was a necessary precaution out here, especially with frequent bear sightings this time of year. She had learned to trust her instincts in the wild, and right now, they were telling her to stay alert. It was then that she heard it, a faint, high-pitched whimper. Maya froze, her senses sharpening. The sound came again, a plaintive cry, barely audible over the rustling leaves. She scanned the forest around her, her hand resting on the strap of her pack as she took a cautious step off the trail. "Hello," she called, her voice steady but low. She didn't expect an answer, but the sound was too distinct to ignore. Following the whimper, she pushed through a thicket of underbrush, the branches snagging at her sleeves. The ground beneath her became softer, moss and fallen leaves muffling her steps. In a small clearing, she saw it, a bear cub lay curled beneath a fallen log, its tiny fur damp and dusted with debris. Its sides heaved with each labored breath, and its wide, dark eyes blinked up at her with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. Maya's heart clenched at the sight. The cub couldn't have been more than a few months old, and there was no sign of its mother. "Hey there," she said softly, crouching a safe distance away. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The cub whimpered again, its tiny claws digging into the earth as it tried to pull itself upright, only to collapse back onto the ground. Maya felt a pang of helplessness. Cubs rarely strayed far from their mothers unless something was seriously wrong. Her mind raced through possibilities. The mother could be nearby, or worse, she could have fallen victim to poachers. She reached for her radio but hesitated. Protocol dictated that she call in wildlife response, but doing so would mean relocating the cub to a sanctuary or rehabilitation center. Maya wasn't sure if that was the right choice yet. She wanted to assess the situation further. Pulling a protein bar from her pack, she unwrapped it and broke off a small piece. She extended her hand toward the cub, her movements slow and deliberate. "Here, this might help," she murmured. The cub sniffed the air, its small nose twitching. With great effort, it crawled forward and took the offering from her hand. Its tiny jaws worked slowly, and Maya felt a flicker of hope as she watched it eat. "You're tougher than you look," she said with a faint smile. "Let's see if we can find your mom." Standing, she motioned for the cub to stay put, but it let out a soft cry and struggled to follow her. She frowned, glancing back as it stumbled after her, its movements unsteady but determined. It was clear that it wasn't going to let her leave it behind. "All right," she said, kneeling again to meet its gaze. "You can come with me for now. But just until we figure this out, okay?" The cub's whimper softened, as though it understood her words. Maya adjusted her pack and began walking back toward the trail, the cub trailing behind her like a fragile shadow. With each step, she felt her earlier doubts about her role begin to fade. She couldn't save the entire forest, but she could save this one small life. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Maya made camp in a small clearing by a stream. She set up her tent and lit a small fire, its glow casting flickering shadows on the surrounding trees. The cub curled up near the fire, its tiny form rising and falling with each steady breath. Maya watched it for a while, a sense of protectiveness settling over her. Her radio crackled again. "Maya, status update?" She hesitated before replying. "Found a bear cub. No sign of the mother yet. I'll keep you posted." "Be careful out there," came the response. "Always," she said, clipping the radio back onto her belt. As the fire crackled and the forest's nocturnal sounds began to emerge, Maya leaned back against her pack, her thoughts drifting. The cub stirred, its small eyes opening to meet hers briefly before it nestled closer to the warmth. Maya smiled faintly. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of purpose beyond the endless paperwork, regulations, and bureaucracy. In this moment, under the canopy of stars and the watchful gaze of the wilderness, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The night deepened, and Maya felt herself slipping into a light doze, the rhythmic sounds of the forest lulling her to rest. But just as she began to drift off, a distant rustle brought her back to full alertness. Her hand instinctively moved toward her flashlight, her eyes scanning the darkness beyond the fire's glow. The cub's ears twitched, and it let out a soft, nervous growl. "What is it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the stream nearby. She stood slowly, her boots pressing into the soft earth as she stepped toward the edge of the clearing. The rustling grew louder, and for a brief moment, Maya thought she saw movement in the shadows. Heart pounding, she reached for her bear spray, her grip tightening on the canister. The forest seemed to close in around her, the towering trees casting long, shifting shadows in the flickering firelight. Then, out of the darkness, a pair of glowing eyes appeared. They were low to the ground and moving closer, their steady approach making Maya's breath catch in her throat. "Easy now," she murmured, taking a step back toward the fire. The cub let out a sharp cry, its tiny form trembling as it pressed itself closer to the warmth. Maya's mind raced, considering her options. If it was the mother bear, she'd need to retreat carefully to avoid provoking an attack. But if it was something else, a predator, or worse, a poacher, she'd have to be ready to defend herself and the cub. The glowing eyes stopped just at the edge of the clearing, and for a tense moment, everything was still. Then, with a low grunt, a massive shape stepped into the light. It was the mother bear. Her fur was matted and streaked with mud, her powerful frame heaving with each breath. She let out a deep, resonant growl that seemed to shake the very ground beneath Maya's feet. The cub's reaction was immediate. It let out a high-pitched cry and stumbled toward the mother, its tiny legs moving with newfound energy. The mother bear's posture softened as the cub reached her, nuzzling against her chest. Maya exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her hand releasing its grip on the bear's spray. "Looks like you found your mom," she said quietly, a faint smile playing on her lips. She took a cautious step back, giving the reunited pair space. The mother bear's dark eyes met Maya's for a fleeting moment, a look that seemed to convey both gratitude and warning. Then, without another sound, she turned and disappeared into the forest, her cub trailing close behind. Maya stood there for a long moment, the forest around her returning to its natural rhythm. The tension in her chest eased, replaced by a profound sense of relief. She knew the encounter would stay with her forever, a reminder of the fragile, untamed beauty she had dedicated her life to protecting. As she returned to her campfire, Maya sat down and gazed into the flames, her thoughts swirling with the events of the night. She felt a renewed determination to continue her work, no matter how daunting the challenges. The forest still had stories to tell, lives to save, and lessons to teach. And she would be there, listening, learning, and protecting. The morning broke gently, sunlight dappling through the canopy of towering pines, illuminating the forest floor in patches of golden light. The fire Maya had tended through the night had long since died, leaving behind faint trails of smoke that dissipated into the cool, crisp air. She stretched, her back protesting the uneven ground, and turned to check on her unexpected companion. The bear cub was awake, sitting upright with a kind of alertness that startled her. Its dark eyes locked onto hers, an intelligence within them that felt almost uncanny. Maya shook her head, dismissing the thought. She was projecting, no doubt an instinct born of fatigue and an emotional attachment to the vulnerable creature. "Morning," she said softly, crouching to its level. The cub responded with a soft whimper, shuffling closer. Its small paw tugged at the hem of her jacket, startling her. She stilled, watching as it pulled again, its movements deliberate and insistent. "What is it?" she murmured, following the cub's gaze as it turned toward the forest beyond the stream. It tugged her jacket once more, then began to move, its small form wobbling but determined. Maya hesitated. The logical part of her mind urged caution, to stay near the trail, to follow protocol, to wait for backup if she needed to venture further. But the cub's urgency was palpable, and something about its behavior made her feel as though this was more than random wandering. She grabbed her pack and followed. The forest thickened as they ventured off the trail, the undergrowth dense and unforgiving. Branches snagged at Maya's sleeves and scraped against her boots, but the cub pressed forward, undeterred. It paused occasionally, glancing back to ensure she was following before continuing its steady pace. Maya marveled at its resolve, her curiosity growing with each step. After an hour of walking, she noticed signs of wear on the cub. Its movements were sluggish, its fur patchy in places and caked with dried mud. She stopped and knelt beside it, reaching into her pack for a water bottle. Pouring a small amount into her cupped hand, she offered it to the cub. It lapped at the water eagerly, its tiny tongue flicking against her palm. She felt a pang of concern at how dehydrated it seemed. "You're not just lost, are you?" she said quietly, her eyes scanning the forest ahead. After drinking its fill, the cub nudged her hand, its whimper carrying a note of urgency that sent a shiver down her spine. It resumed its trek, and Maya had no choice but to follow. The clearing appeared suddenly, the dense trees giving way to an open space bathed in sunlight. Maya's breath caught in her throat. At the center of the clearing lay an abandoned campsite, its disarray stark against the natural order of the forest. A tent, once sturdy, had collapsed, its poles jutting at odd angles. Gear was strewn across the ground, a torn sleeping bag, an empty water bottle, and a backpack with its contents spilled out like entrails. Maya approached cautiously, her senses on high alert. The cub stayed close, its small frame trembling as it pressed against her leg. She crouched, her hand brushing against the torn fabric of the tent. The edges were frayed, and claw marks marred the surface. A bear attack, she thought grimly. But there was no sign of blood. No remains. Near the remnants of the campfire, something caught her eye. She reached down and picked up a photograph, its edges curled with moisture. The image was faded but clear enough to make out a young child grinning beside an adult, likely a parent. The sight sent a pang of sadness through her. Beside the photograph lay a small notebook, its cover scuffed and stained. Maya hesitated before opening it. The pages crackled softly as she turned them. The handwriting was hurried, the letters slanting unevenly across the paper. One entry stood out. October 14th. "We're out of options. Riley's fever isn't breaking, and the medicine isn't enough. I'm going to hike to the ranger station for help. If you find this, please." The entry ended abruptly, the ink smudged as though the writer's hand had faltered. Maya's stomach twisted. She glanced around the clearing again, her mind racing. There was no sign of anyone, no indication of where they might have gone. Only the cub remained, its gaze fixed on her with an almost pleading intensity. "You led me here," she murmured, realization dawning. "Were you with them?" The cub made a soft noise, pawing at the ground near the photograph. Maya felt a chill run through her. If the writer of the diary, likely the adult in the photograph, had gone for help, they hadn't made it back. And if the cub had been left behind, it meant the child, Riley, was either still out there or... Maya pushed the thought aside. She couldn't afford to dwell on worst-case scenarios. She spent the next hour scouring the campsite for clues. Most of the supplies were either damaged or unusable, but she found a trail map tucked into a backpack. It was marked with a route leading toward the nearest ranger station, a trek of at least 10 miles. Maya studied the map, her fingers tracing the faded ink. If the adult had taken this route, they would have had to pass through some of the roughest terrain in the area. The cub whimpered, breaking her concentration. It nudged her hand, its movements growing more sluggish. Maya's worry deepened. The animal needed rest, and she couldn't risk pushing it further without a plan. She set up a small camp nearby, using the least damaged of the salvaged gear to create a makeshift shelter. The cub curled up beside her as she lit a small fire, its body shivering despite the warmth. As the fire crackled, Maya opened the notebook again, reading through the earlier entries. The writer described their journey into the forest, a trip meant to bond with their child, a break from the chaos of everyday life. The entries were filled with observations of wildlife, the beauty of the scenery, and Riley's curious questions about the world around them. But as the pages went on, the tone shifted. Mentions of Riley falling ill became frequent, the writer's worry bleeding into their words. "You're the missing piece, aren't you?" she whispered, glancing at the cub. "You stayed behind to watch over them. But why were you left alone?" The next morning, Maya resolved to follow the marked route on the map. She packed light, ensuring she had enough supplies for both herself and the cub. As they set out, the forest seemed to close in around them, the trees casting long shadows that stretched across the uneven ground. The trail was faint, overgrown in places, and littered with obstacles that slowed their progress. Hours passed in relative silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of a bird. The cub stayed close, its movements slow but steady. Maya kept an eye out for any signs of the missing hiker, her mind replaying the diary entry over and over. She couldn't shake the feeling that time was against her. They reached a rocky incline just as the sun began to dip toward the horizon. Maya paused, scanning the area for a safe path. That's when she saw it, a scrap of fabric caught on a jagged rock, fluttering faintly in the breeze. She climbed toward it, her pulse quickening. The fabric was from a jacket, the same shade as the one worn by the adult in the photograph. "We're close," she murmured, glancing back at the cub. It stared at her, its dark eyes reflecting the fading light. With renewed determination, Maya pressed on, her steps quickening despite the fatigue tugging at her limbs. The cub followed, its presence a small but steady reminder of why she couldn't give up. The forest was vast, its secrets buried deep, but Maya was determined to uncover them, to bring closure to the mystery that had drawn her into its heart. And as the shadows deepened, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Her breath caught as she spotted a faint makeshift marker in the dirt ahead, an arrow etched into the earth with a stick, pointing north. Someone had been here. Someone had left a trail. The forest stretched ahead of Maya in a dense labyrinth of shadows and shifting light. Each step deeper into the wilderness felt like peeling back the layers of an unspoken mystery. The bear cub shuffled ahead, pausing occasionally to glance back at her with an almost expectant expression. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about instinct. There was something purposeful about the way it moved, as though it knew exactly where it was going. She tightened the straps of her pack, her breath forming faint puffs in the crisp air. The late afternoon sunlight barely penetrated the canopy above, its golden glow fragmented into shards by the towering trees. The cub's small form darted over a patch of moss, its ears twitching at the faint sound of a stream in the distance. Maya's thoughts wandered as she followed, her mind tugged between the urgency of the present and the echoes of her past. She remembered long hikes with her father, a passionate conservationist who had dedicated his life to protecting wilderness like this. He had always spoken of the forest as something sacred, a place where every creature, every tree, played a role in a greater story. Maya had loved those days, even when the treks left her legs aching and her face smudged with dirt. But her father's untimely death had left a chasm in her life, one she had never fully bridged. "Am I living up to your legacy, Dad?" She wondered, her chest tightening as the thought settled in. The cub's sudden whimper snapped her back to the present. It stood at the edge of a wide stream, the water rushing over smooth rocks with a frigid intensity. Maya crouched beside it, her eyes scanning for a safe crossing. The stream wasn't particularly deep, but the current was swift, and the temperature would be unforgiving. "We can do this," she said, more to herself than to the cub. Shrugging off her pack, she secured it tightly before wading into the water. The cold bit at her legs through her waterproof pants, but she moved steadily, planting each step firmly to avoid slipping. The cub hesitated on the bank, its small paw kneading the ground nervously. "Come on," Maya called softly, extending her hand. "You've been braver than me this whole time." The cub's ears twitched at her voice. It stepped forward tentatively, placing one paw in the water, then another. Maya stood still, watching as it navigated the stream, its small body trembling but determined. When it finally reached her, she scooped it up, holding it close against her chest as she made her way to the opposite bank. The cub's warmth seeped through her jacket, a comforting reminder of the connection forming between them. The sun dipped lower, casting the forest in hues of amber and deepening shadows. Maya could feel the storm before it arrived. The air grew heavy, the wind picking up and rustling the leaves in restless waves. She quickened her pace, her eyes scanning the horizon for shelter. The cub stayed close, its small frame pressed against her legs as though seeking reassurance. The first raindrops were sparse, barely more than a mist, but they carried the promise of something more. Within minutes, the sky opened up, unleashing a deluge that turned the forest floor into a slippery mess of mud and fallen leaves. Maya spotted a cluster of boulders ahead, their overhangs offering just enough space for them to huddle beneath. She crouched under the largest rock, pulling the cub into her lap and wrapping her coat around its shivering form. The rain drummed against the stone above them, a steady rhythm that filled the silence. Maya rested her chin on her knees, her arms cradling the cub like a fragile secret. "You're tougher than you look," she murmured, brushing a hand over its damp fur. The cub nuzzled into her chest, its tiny body relaxing for the first time since they had set out. In that moment, Maya felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility, not just for the cub, but for whatever this journey was leading them toward. The storm raged on, but Maya's resolve only grew stronger. Her thoughts drifted to the stories she had heard from other rangers, tales of strange animal behaviors during crises, of bonds formed between people and wildlife in the face of danger. She wondered if this was one of those moments where instinct and fate intertwined to push both human and creature toward survival. By the time the rain eased, darkness had fallen. The forest came alive with nocturnal sounds, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of unseen creatures, the distant howls that made Maya tighten her grip on the bear spray at her belt. She debated setting up camp but felt a nagging pull to keep going. The cub's urgency hadn't waned, if anything, it seemed more determined than ever. "All right, little one," she whispered, rising from her spot beneath the boulder. "Lead the way." Hours blurred into a haze of careful steps and focused breathing. Maya's legs ached, and her clothes clung to her from the rain and exertion. Just as she considered stopping, the forest began to thin. The trees grew sparser, their trunks spaced wider apart, and the ground sloped upward. Then she saw it. A faint light flickered through the trees ahead, its warm glow a stark contrast to the cold darkness around her. She quickened her pace, the cub bounding ahead with renewed energy. As she crested the slope, the source of the light came into view, a makeshift shelter constructed against a large fallen tree. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Beside the shelter lay a man, his body partially covered with a torn blanket, his face pale, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Nearby, a child, no older than 7, sat slumped against the trunk of the tree, their head resting on their knees. They didn't stir as Maya approached. "Hey," she called, dropping her pack and rushing forward. The man's eyes fluttered open at her voice, his expression dazed but alert enough to register her presence. "Help," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "My daughter? Riley." Maya knelt beside the child, her heart pounding as she checked for a pulse. It was weak but steady. Riley's face was flushed, her skin clammy to the touch, fever. The diary entry flashed in Maya's mind, "Riley's fever isn't breaking." The cub whined softly, nudging Riley's hand with its nose. Maya's chest tightened as she realized the connection. The cub must have stayed with Riley after the father had left to find help. It had been protecting her, drawn by some primal instinct to stay near the child who had likely offered it food and comfort. "You did good," Maya whispered to the cub, her voice thick with emotion. She turned her attention to the father, assessing his injuries. His leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, likely broken, and his lips were cracked from dehydration. He must have injured himself on the way back to his daughter, leaving them both stranded here. "Stay with me," Maya said firmly, reaching for her radio. The signal crackled weakly, but she managed to get through to the ranger station. Relief flooded her when the dispatcher confirmed that a rescue team was on the way. "They'll be here soon," she assured the man, though she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. She unpacked a thermal blanket and wrapped it around Riley, then offered the man water and a protein bar. He accepted them with trembling hands. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice cracking. "I didn't think anyone would find us." Maya glanced at the cub, now curled up beside Riley, its small body pressed protectively against hers. "You have this little one to thank," she said with a faint smile. "It led me right to you." Hours later, the rescue team arrived, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Medics tended to the father and daughter, stabilizing them for transport. The cub watched from a distance, its eyes following every movement as though ensuring the humans were safe. As the team prepared to leave, one of the medics approached Maya. "You saved their lives," he said. Maya shook her head. "It wasn't just me, I had a little help." The cub pressed against her leg, and she knelt to stroke its fur. The journey had been grueling, but in that moment, Maya felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The forest had tested her in every way, but it had also given her the chance to save lives, both human and animal. After the vehicles disappeared, she decided to stay behind with the cub. The forest was quiet again, only the faint rustling of leaves and the distant cries of nocturnal creatures breaking the stillness. She leaned against a tree and let out a long sigh. "What now?" she asked aloud, her voice sounding strange in the stillness. The cub blinked at her, its small form huddled by her side as though understanding her question. It wasn't just a companion anymore, it felt like a partner in this strange unfolding story. Maya thought back to the ranger station. There would be questions about her report, about the cub, about the family she'd just saved. But for now, under the canopy of stars, she didn't need answers. The journey had become more than survival. It was about connection, trust, and finding something to believe in again. With the cub by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The dense forest was silent, save for the sound of Maya's labored breathing as she knelt beside Riley. The child lay motionless, her skin pale and her breath shallow. Maya's hands trembled, but she forced herself to focus. There was no time for hesitation. "Riley," she murmured, brushing the damp hair from the girl's forehead. "Stay with me, okay?" Beside her, Riley's father groaned, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. His face was contorted in pain, but his eyes remained fixed on his daughter. Maya's heart clenched. The weight of their lives pressed down on her, but she had no choice but to act. Taking a deep breath, Maya shifted her attention to Riley. The child's pulse was faint, but it was there. Maya tilted Riley's head back and checked her airway. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, her voice steadying. Focused, she began CPR, her hands pressing against Riley's small chest in measured compressions. Beside her, the bear cub, Buddy, let out soft, distressed whimpers. The sound filled the air, a poignant reminder of the stakes. 1, 2, 3, Maya counted under her breath, her training guiding her actions. When she paused to give Riley a breath, she felt a surge of panic at the girl's unresponsiveness. But she couldn't afford to let fear take over. She resumed compressions, her mind racing through every step she'd learned in her emergency training. Behind her, Riley's father tried to push himself upright. "Riley," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "Is she?" "She's going to be okay," Maya said firmly, not breaking her rhythm. "I've got this. You need to stay still, your leg is in bad shape." He sank back with a groan, his head resting against the base of the fallen tree. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Just as Maya began to fear the worst, a faint cough broke the tense silence. Riley's chest heaved as she drew in a shaky breath. Maya let out a breath of her own, relief washing over her like a wave. "That's it," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Good girl. Keep breathing." The cub, sensing the shift, moved closer and nuzzled Riley's side. The child's eyes fluttered open, her gaze unfocused but alive. She turned her head slightly, her lips forming a weak word. "Buddy." Maya smiled through her tears. "He's right here," she said softly. "He's been watching over you." With Riley stabilized, Maya turned her attention to her father. His leg was badly broken, and every movement elicited a sharp intake of breath. Maya rummaged through her pack, pulling out a first aid kit and a roll of duct tape. "This is going to hurt," she warned, meeting his eyes, "but I need to stabilize your leg. If I don't, it could get worse before the rescue team gets here." He nodded, biting down on a strip of cloth she handed him. Maya worked quickly but carefully, fashioning a splint from sturdy branches and securing it with duct tape. The makeshift support would hold for now, but she knew time was critical. "You're doing great," she said as she finished. "Help is on the way." Maya grabbed her radio, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Ranger crossed to search and rescue," she said, her voice firm. "We're at the coordinates I provided earlier. Both individuals are stabilized, but we need immediate extraction." "Over." The radio crackled to life. "Copy that, Ranger Cross. ETA 15 minutes. Hold tight." Maya exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing slightly. 15 minutes, she could manage that. She glanced at Riley, who was now resting quietly with Buddy curled beside her. The sight brought a pang of emotion to Maya's chest. "You're tougher than you look," she murmured, brushing a hand over Riley's forehead. The distant sound of rotor blades broke the stillness of the forest. Maya looked up, her heart lifting as the helicopter came into view, its powerful beams cutting through the canopy. The rescue team descended with practiced efficiency, their movements precise and purposeful. Medics rushed to Riley and her father, assessing their conditions and preparing them for transport. Maya stepped back, her body sagging with exhaustion but her mind sharp. She provided the team with a detailed account of the situation, ensuring they had all the information they needed. As the medics worked, Riley's eyes fluttered open again. She turned her head weakly, her gaze searching until it landed on Buddy. "Buddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You stayed?" The cub let out a soft huff, leaning closer to Riley as if to reassure her. One of the medics looked at Maya. "The cub, it's been with her this whole time?" Maya nodded. "He's the reason I found them. He led me here." The medic's expression softened. "Incredible. We'll make sure he's taken care of." As Riley and her father were loaded onto the helicopter, Maya stood beside Buddy, her hand resting on his back. The cub watched the helicopter lift off, his gaze following the rising machine until it disappeared into the horizon. For a moment, the forest was quiet again, the stillness broken only by the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Maya crouched beside Buddy, her eyes meeting his. "You did good, little guy," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're a hero, you know that?" The cub tilted his head, his dark eyes filled with an intelligence that took Maya's breath away. She knew their journey together wasn't over. Not yet. The rescue team offered to take Buddy to a wildlife rehabilitation center, a place where he could recover and eventually reintegrate into the wild. Maya agreed, knowing it was the best option for him. She stayed with Buddy until the transport arrived, her heart heavy but full of gratitude. As the cub was carefully loaded into the transport vehicle, he let out a soft whimper, his gaze fixed on Maya. She placed a hand on the side of the crate, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "This isn't goodbye," she said. "I'll see you again, Buddy. I promise." The vehicle disappeared down the winding trail, leaving Maya standing alone in the clearing. She looked around at the forest, the place where everything had changed. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves whispering secrets only they could hear. Maya took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling over her. She had faced her fears, trusted her instincts, and made a difference. And as she turned to make her way back to the ranger station, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, a connection to the wild and the lives held within its depths. As the evening settled in, Maya walked back through the forest, her thoughts replaying the events of the day. She could hear the faint echoes of the helicopter, now long gone, and the rhythmic rustling of the trees in the breeze. Though exhaustion tugged at her limbs, there was a deep satisfaction in her chest. She had saved lives today, not just human, but the life of a small cub who had proven to be as resilient as the forest itself. In the distance, the ranger station came into view, its warm light spilling out onto the surrounding clearing. Inside, her colleagues would want to hear the story, to know every detail of how she had found Riley and her father, and how Buddy had led her through the wilderness. But for now, Maya paused at the edge of the clearing, taking one last look at the forest behind her. "Thank you," she whispered, "to the trees, to the earth, to the wild. She didn't know who she was thanking, the forest, Buddy, or perhaps her own instincts, but she felt the words deeply. Maya stepped forward, the light of the station pulling her home. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The morning air was crisp and laden with the scent of damp earth as sunlight pierced through the remnants of the storm clouds. The hikers, still shaky from their ordeal, sat together near the remains of their makeshift shelter. Their clothes were torn, their faces pale, but their eyes gleamed with gratitude as they watched Maya gently cradle the bear cub in her arms. The cub, now christened Buddy, had a visible gash on its shoulder, a reminder of the frantic chaos from the night before. Yet, it seemed oddly at peace, resting its small head against Maya's chest. Its soft, rhythmic breathing matched the pulse of Maya's own heart. She stroked Buddy's coarse fur, murmuring soothing words that seemed to calm not just the cub but everyone present. "It's like he knows," one of the hikers, a woman named Elena, said softly, her voice hoarse, her hands still trembling. "He knows you saved him." Maya glanced up, her own exhaustion evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. "Maybe," she replied. "Or maybe he just needed someone to hold on to." Elena smiled faintly and leaned back against the tree trunk, her gaze lingering on Buddy. "He's lucky it was you." The sound of a distant helicopter broke the fragile stillness. The rescue team arrived shortly after sunrise, alerted by a distress signal the hikers had managed to send before the storm intensified. As paramedics tended to the injured and rangers assessed the scene, Maya remained with Buddy. Despite her exhaustion, a newfound determination glimmered in her eyes. "We'll take him to the sanctuary," one of the rangers said, kneeling beside Maya. "They'll know how to care for him." Maya nodded, reluctant but understanding. She kissed the top of Buddy's head before gently handing him over to the ranger. The cub whimpered softly but didn't resist. As Buddy was placed into a carrier, his eyes met Maya's through the small mesh window. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, a promise, a connection that neither time nor distance could sever. "You'll take good care of him, right?" Maya asked, her voice wavering slightly. The ranger nodded firmly. "I promise." "He's in good hands now." Maya stood there, watching as the ranger carried Buddy toward the waiting vehicle. Elena came to stand beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did something incredible," Elena said. "Not just for him, but for all of us." Maya gave a small smile, her eyes never leaving the carrier. "I think he saved us too," she whispered. The days that followed were a blur of recovery and reflection. The hikers, though battered, carried a renewed appreciation for life and the kindness of strangers. They reached out to Maya, expressing their heartfelt gratitude and pledging to share their story of survival. Their words filled her with quiet pride, but it was Buddy's unwavering trust that lingered most profoundly in her mind. One evening, as she sorted through supplies at the lodge, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Elena. "We owe you so much. Let us know if there's ever a way to help. Buddy's story has already inspired us to think differently about the world." Maya stared at the message for a long moment, her thoughts drifting to the cub and the bond they'd formed. A small, tired smile played on her lips as she typed a simple reply. "Thank you. I think Buddy's the real hero here." Maya found herself drawn to her father's journal in the weeks after the incident. The leather-bound book, worn from years of use, had always been a source of comfort. Its pages were filled with sketches of animals, notes on ecosystems, and snippets of wisdom her father had shared with her as a child. One entry stood out. The smallest act of care can echo across the vast web of life. Never underestimate the power of a single moment of kindness. Maya traced the words with her fingers, her mind replaying the events that led her to Buddy. Her father's teachings, once abstract, now felt tangible and alive. She realized that her decision to help the cub wasn't just an act of compassion, it was a continuation of her father's legacy. Fueled by this insight, Maya began channeling her energy into raising awareness about conservation. She started small, sharing her story at community events and schools. Her passion was infectious, and soon, her efforts gained momentum. Social media became a powerful tool, allowing her to reach a broader audience. She shared pictures of Buddy's recovery and videos of her encounters with wildlife, each post a testament to the profound connection between humans and animals. During one such event, a young boy raised his hand after Maya's talk. "Do you think Buddy remembers you?" he asked, his wide eyes filled with curiosity. Maya smiled. "I think he does," she said. "And even if he didn't, what matters is that he's safe now. That's what's important." The boy nodded thoughtfully, clutching a small stuffed bear in his hands. Maya couldn't help but feel a surge of hope as she watched him. One evening, as Maya worked on a presentation for an upcoming conservation conference, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video from the sanctuary. In the video, Buddy was playing with a group of other cubs, his energy boundless and his joy unmistakable. As she watched, tears filled her eyes. "You're thriving," she murmured to herself. "That's all I could have hoped for." Months later, Maya drove up a winding dirt road flanked by towering pines. The sanctuary sprawled before her, a haven of open fields, dense forests, and crystal-clear streams. The air buzzed with the sounds of birdsong and rustling leaves, a symphony of life thriving in harmony. Maya stepped out of her car, her heart pounding with anticipation. She had kept in touch with the sanctuary staff, receiving updates on Buddy's progress, but seeing him again in person felt like a reunion with a long-lost friend. A staff member greeted her with a warm smile and led her to the enclosure where Buddy now lived. "He's been doing so well," the staff member said as they walked. "He's playful, curious, and getting stronger every day. You'll see for yourself in a moment." The sight took her breath away. Buddy had grown significantly, his once fragile frame now sturdy and full of life. His fur shone in the sunlight, and his playful antics brought laughter to a group of children watching from a safe distance. Yet, as Maya approached the enclosure, Buddy froze. His ears perked up, and his dark eyes locked onto hers. "Go on," the staff member encouraged. "He's been waiting for you." Maya stepped closer, her hand resting against the wire fence. "Buddy," she whispered. He ambled over, his movements deliberate, as if savoring the moment. When he reached her, he extended a paw through the gap. Without hesitation, Maya placed her hand beneath it, feeling the warmth and weight of his touch. Tears welled in her eyes as Buddy leaned his head against the fence, his eyes closing in contentment. "Hi, Buddy," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You've come so far." The world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of mutual understanding. Maya felt an overwhelming sense of peace, as though every challenge she'd faced had led her to this moment. As she stepped back, Buddy let out a soft growl, not of anger, but of affection. Maya smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. She took one last look at him before turning to leave, knowing she'd be back soon. Before she reached her car, Maya stopped at the visitor center. Inside, she found a mural depicting the sanctuary's history. Among the images was one of Buddy, captured in a moment of playful joy. A small plaque beneath the image read, "A testament to resilience and the enduring bond between humans and nature." Maya reached out to touch the plaque, her fingers lingering on the engraved words. Her journey with Buddy had begun in a moment of chance, but it had grown into something far greater. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to continue her work, not just for Buddy, but for every creature in need of care. The sun dipped low in the sky as Maya walked toward her car. She paused to take in the scene, a pair of deer grazing in the distance, a flock of birds soaring overhead, and children's laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. The sanctuary was alive with hope, a testament to what could be achieved when humans and nature coexisted in harmony. As she drove away, the image of Buddy resting his paw on her hand stayed with her, a symbol of the enduring bond between all living things. Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to continue her journey not just for herself, but for every creature whose life she could touch. The road ahead was long, but Maya knew she wasn't traveling it alone. In her heart, Buddy's paw print would always guide her, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple into extraordinary outcomes. And so, the story of a fragile bear cub and a determined ranger comes to a close. But its impact lingers far beyond the forest where it all began. It's not just a tale of survival. It's a story of resilience, trust, and the invisible threads that connect all living beings. The cub who refused to leave the side of a stranger reminded us that even in the wildest corners of the world, kindness and courage can transcend barriers, language, and even species. This encounter wasn't just about saving lives. It was about rediscovering the beauty of compassion and the incredible strength we find when we listen, trust, and act with purpose. It's a reminder that sometimes, the smallest moments, like the unwavering loyalty of a little bear, can teach us the biggest lessons about humanity, hope, and the power of connection. If this story moved you or made you see the natural world in a new light, I invite you to join this journey of discovery and inspiration. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay connected as we share more stories that reveal the magic of life, both human and wild. Your support means everything. It helps us bring these incredible tales to people around the world. Thank you for watching, and remember, the smallest acts of kindness can lead to the most extraordinary stories. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and never stop exploring the wonders of our world.